don't feel frightened to ask any question.
Times have changed. The property market has changed so much.
It's a buyer's market, but I mean...
Building those good relationships with clients, having them invest in you in the way that you genuinely are interested and invested in them, makes it easier going forward. This is exciting now. Welcome to our first podcast with you and I, Chris.
Hey!
Today, we're going to be talking about how property investment has evolved over the years. My name's Naomi West. I am the Customer Relations Consultant here at Knight Knox, and this is my colleague...
Chris Tomes, and I'm the Property Consultant here at Knight Knox.
So this is really exciting because we're both very passionate about our roles here at Knight Knox. And I think we've both had some sort of experience in the property industry before coming here, haven't we?
We have. I mean, for myself, I'm not sure I want to really say this on camera, but I've actually been in and around the industry for 27 years.
But you're only 27 years old, Chris.
I know, I started when I was like 10. But yeah, it seems to have flown by, although... That's my working life because I sort of had quite an early introduction to property through my mum and dad.
All right.
Because my mum and dad moved around quite a lot when I was a kid because of my dad's job, basically. And my mum and dad always bought new houses, new build houses.
Did they?
So by the age of about 10, I reckon I'd probably been to a million different show homes, sales offices, picking furniture, colours and everything else.
I would have loved that. It's like a giant dollhouse.
Exactly. And I thought that was just the norm that people did that. So I was just exposed to going into these beautiful new homes and my mum and dad going, oh, we're going to have that carpet here and we're going to have this wallpaper and stuff.
Yeah.
So I was actually probably destined to be in this sector
I
from
never
a very
knew
early...
that.
I know. From a very early age.
Yeah.
And then it just sort of evolved from there. So, and then, I think my first... I actually worked, as you know, Naomi, I worked in a slightly different industry in the media and advertising industry for a good number of years. But I always worked with property clients. Mm-hmm. So... Again, that was of interest to me, and it was sort of circumstantial that I ended up just working with property clients, so a mixture of like new build developers and like estate agents, and obviously from their point of view, it was a fairly simple market back then. It was literally first-time buyers, people who'd got young families who were potentially going to be looking to, trade up to a slightly bigger house or probably like empty nesters. Yeah. So there was only like 3 different types of target audience then, so it was actually relatively simple.
It was.
But if you think about where we are now, it's like completely different.
It is, isn't it? It's come on.
So, and I've seen sort of so many different kind of sides of it, and obviously now working here at Knight Knox in terms of, investment properties, it's just another, string to your bow, if you like, in terms of that sector.
Well, that's it, because you just think initially, before you've worked for Knight Knox, and if you're in a separate area, you sometimes think that's all that there is to it. Yeah. And you might get to know about your estate agents or your solicitors, but I think product-wise, I never knew there was so much out there until I came to work for Knight Knox. And again, as you know, I used to work for a property law firm for just under 10 years before coming here. And I've been here nearly 12 years in March. And I used to always just think it was just going to be a standard residential 2 up or 2 down. It was mainly freeholds that I dealt with, houses that have been in situ for like 150 years and been passed on from generation to generation. We did have a lot of flats that we dealt with, but we'd have a separate department that dealt with that. And I just didn't realise that there was just so much out there on the market for people to get into. Back in the day, if a landlord was looking to improve his portfolio, he would just buy up another 1 or 2 couple of houses, turn them into HMOs, and there you go, that was it. But even then, it would tend to be people that had done it before, or the dads or the granddads or the parents were in it before, and they would just take it on from there. But it's nice seeing the different side of it. I think one thing that hasn't changed that I think I've brought from property law, and you've probably done the same, is just the enthusiasm and the learning and ultimately the customer base of it. Yeah,
I think it's important when people come from different backgrounds as well, like maybe coming from a slightly different angle.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly from my point of view, it's actually relatively straightforward for me. Again, we were having this conversation the other day. I used to love working, or still like working with like first-time buyers or first-time investors, because you can properly add value to their experience when they're purchasing a property. I mean, I remember when I bought my first house when I was, 23, something like that.
So 2 weeks ago then.
So 2 weeks ago, I had literally no idea what stamp duty was, what a fixed rate mortgage was, what a variable rate mortgage was. Yeah. I didn't know what to do with solicitors. So I think back to that then, and I was literally just not a clue.
Yeah.
So then when I when I was first starting selling sort of new build properties, I would come into contact with the first time buyer. I would literally say to them, don't feel frightened to ask any question. Ask any question you want. It doesn't matter how silly it sounds, because the chances are...
It's never silly.
It's never silly. And you can properly add that value to them. And then, obviously, you want to talk about what type of property they want, what their price band is, but ultimately, it's just making that experience comfortable and enjoyable.
Yeah.
Because I think there is an element sometimes you think, well, buying a property, it can be stressful, it can be quite hard work. It doesn't need to be at all.
I think if they've got somebody that's sort of confident, like really understands what it is that's being sold, is enthusiastic about it, and is able to take them along on the journey, it does take a lot of that stress away from them.
Yeah,
and again, your personality adds a lot to it as well. It feels less stressful if they've got someone like you that's helped guide them through, isn't it?
Very kind of you to say. I mean, yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I think, again, going back to the experience of first-time buyers, they come in with their mum and dad, and their mum and dad would be quite often forceful in terms of pushing their ideas onto them. And I get why they would bring them along, because obviously it's, they want that sort of reassurance of having parents there. But I would actually think to myself, if I could say to them quietly, maybe next time you come in, just come in on your own, just so you've got a little bit of clear headspace. And just look at, let's concentrate on what you want, because the parents, God love them, they're trying their best, but it's just quite intense for them then when they're there, and just say, look, just have a nice, easy conversation, and then obviously just impart my knowledge to help them, really, because I just love it. I just love helping people.
And again, that's something that you've probably taken from your previous job into this current role now at Knight Knox, because as a property consultant, you're also going to have first-time investors that have come with us for the first time, or they could have invested with other companies in the past. We're not the only agent out there, although we are the best. But they're coming maybe with a preconceived idea of what their other friends might have suggested, what other investors have suggested, and you've got to sort of whittle that down, haven't you?
Yeah, and I think it's also... it still surprises me now that when people come to me, that they will have an idea of what the property investment market looks like. Maybe, a classic sort of residential apartment in Manchester or Liverpool, which has got a private resident in. Then when we start talking about purpose-built student accommodation or assisted living, or all of the different categories that you've got, that you can tell it's like, oh, right, okay, I had no idea these existed. Yeah. And that's obviously our job, to try and introduce them to different opportunities, different investment potential, locations. Yeah. And it's exactly the same process. If they're a first-time buyer or a first-time investor, I'm almost like, this is great, because I can sort of impart my knowledge, spend a little bit more time to get to know them as well, what their background is, where they come from, and just try and get a thorough understanding of what their current situation is, because it's brilliant then, because it helps me build up that rapport with the client, and really get to the nub of what they want to achieve in an investment. So all those same things apply, basically.
Exactly. And again, it is just educating them about the products that we have at the moment. Not to say that they've come into this blindly and they're not aware of what they want, because our marketing is so strong. They're able to see what there is out on the market. They've seen the yields that are being achieved. But I think it just takes us back. There are still quite a lot of old school people out there that don't realise that times have changed. The property market has changed so much. Like I said previously, when I worked at a property law firm, if someone wanted to invest into student accommodation, the main thing that they would do, buy a house, change it into a HMO. Yeah. And we've already seen over the last 20 years at least I have from working in the property industry. You'd mentioned while we've chatted off screen about purpose-built student accommodations, how even they've come on so much over the years in the standard of what's being delivered now. It's not the same as it was back then, is it?
I mean, I was a student a long time ago, and if I think of the sort of student digs that we had back then, you know, it's night and day now. I mean, I was saying this to you the other day. I was reading a report. It was from Knight Frank, so not Knox, but Knight Frank. And it was basically saying that purpose-built student accommodation these days has got some huge benefits, obviously to the investor, because you've got that solid rental income coming in all of the time, but the actual student experience is so much better. You know, if they're in an HMO or an old-fashioned sort of student property, they have uncertainty about their bills in terms of what they might be paying. They have really poor internet access, you know, really bad Wi-Fi. You know, the landlord could all of a sudden come round and change something that they're not happy with.
Not just that, the standard of the property itself, it might not have had any treatment for a while, it might not have been redecorated, brought up to a certain standard, especially if it's an old building. It just makes that student experience less, particularly if you're away from home. Like if you're away from your family, the last thing you want to be doing is worrying about bills and concerns and you know, or can I get my Wi-Fi running? They need something that's close to the campus, something that's safe and secure, so the family feel reassured. And just having all those known factors for having it. And you know, as I say, 20 years ago, that it just didn't exist, you know? No, it didn't. Where I grew up in Manchester, so I grew up in Fallowfield, which is not far from one of the main campuses for Manchester University. So it was a hub for students, but it was typically just these 2 up, 2 downs with so many people crammed into them. You'd go round to someone's house for a brew and it'd smell a bit damp, and you know, they had the 2-bar fire on, and you can't believe that that's how it would be. But now, like, we've got places like X1 Cheltenham Place that is recently completed. It's absolutely beautiful, bespoke hotel style student accommodation where there's waiting lists for people to take up occupation there, and it's because they've got everything on the doorstep. And for whether you're an overseas student who's got family overseas, or whether you're just moving from down the road, just having that certainty that everything is all sorted. You've just got to get yourself up, get to your lectures, and get back. That's what you want, really.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point, because the overseas investors thing, you know, or overseas families, if they're putting their kids into the UK, into, you know, they don't know the location. They don't want them to be miles away from the campus, travelling in by bus late at night. You know, they want to know that their kids are going to be safe, secure, in good quality accommodation.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want that? You know, it's just that when I was a student, say 20 odd years, it didn't exist. It was horrific.
Now I'd like to go for a little holiday. How about they do just like a little breakaway when the students go away? Can I just have the whole run of one of the places to myself? Little gym, get away from the 8-year-old.
Perfect.
Can't see that happening.
Concierge service. Yeah, I like the sound of that. Should we do it?
All right, let's just do it. Let's do it. But, you know, you'd mentioned as well, we've got student accommodation, we've got assisted living. I've got a twin sister. Yes, there is another one in me. I've got a twin sister, and she's worked in social care for about 25 years. So before she went into that job, I didn't realise that the government and the local authority actually had these homes for people with learning disabilities or physical disabilities, where it could help them feel more independent in their own living space. But they were larger houses where you would still have staff living on site, so they would do night shifts and they'd be on call. But it really just helped families and individuals just get more of a better standard of living. So that was my first instance into establishing what social care would be for people that were impacted by physical disabilities or learning disabilities. And then it was brought to my attention again with regards to assisted living that we offer, and is incredibly popular at the moment, isn't it, Chris?
It is, and I think set aside the investment potential of it. It's the social impact side of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I speak to a lot of clients who their initial interest in it, it's the net returns are amazing and it's hands off and such, but their initial interest in it is actually because they might have a family member who is in that position themselves. That they've got, something intrinsic about that investment that just really they like the impact and essentially the economic benefit that it brings to them, but it's that social element to it, and I think it's important to emphasise that sometimes because you can just get lost in the numbers and what it can deliver, but in actual fact, particularly given obviously hospitals are under pressure in terms of waiting times and waiting lists, and they're absolutely invaluable. They change people's lives.
I was about to say that they are invaluable, and I do think they have a real impact on the tenants that go into these accommodations, because before a lot of these projects were launched, we already know from a social housing point of view, there's a strain, there's not enough homes, or there's not enough homes that are adequate for people with certain recommendations or certain requirements. So it's definitely filling a gap there. And it's great that twofold, it's now been offered to individuals who might want to buy one or two, because normally it was people that were buying sort of blocks of these type of projects. And it's just that making sure that it's something that becomes available now more to our clients. How long have we been offering assisted living for now?
It's been in the market for about, in terms of institutional investors, probably 5 or 6 years. But in terms of individual investors, we're probably coming up to a couple of years in the market.
Yeah.
I think the thing I've noticed most is particularly for my overseas investors, and we always have a massive proportion of our investors are overseas. A lot of the time, they never even come to the UK. Yeah. So for them, they want something that is completely hands-off, something that they never have to worry about having the social impact as well, but just something that they can literally leave and earn income from them. Yeah. So they're an actual perfect vehicle for that, because they are the epitome of a hands-off investment. I know that sounds a bit cheesy, but it's true.
It is true.
And they're just fabulous products for that.
Yeah.
I mean, they've just flown since we've introduced them. But the locations are great. The quality of the living is amazing. When the tenants move in, they get like old furniture packs when they move in.
Oh, see, that takes the strain off it as well, doesn't it, for the tenants?
Because it must be stressful. At the end of the day, particularly if they're relocating from somewhere, they want it to be as hassle-free as possible. And this is just the tenants.
Yeah.
So if you're the landlord, knowing that they've got that, security, they've got nothing to worry about, it just works all round.
That's a good point that you raised there, security, because we've been talking about the changes in our careers and in the property as a whole over the last 10-20 years. So there has been a lot of changes, and there are going to be future changes that are coming on. We've got some reform acts that are going to be coming into place with regards to the length of tenancy agreements. I know that a lot of landlords, especially when they've built up their portfolio themselves, they rent the properties out themselves, they're probably going to find this reform act a little bit stressful, because they like the idea of a long-term contract. Short-term contracts with no end dates, which they're now proposing to bring in, could bring a little bit of uncertainty for tenants and for landlords. I know that I used to rent a lot before I purchased my property a couple of years ago, and I always just wanted, the dream for me was finding a great landlord, getting a nice long tenancy agreement out of it, not having to worry about my prices going up or any unexpected worries that have come out of place. I know sometimes it was a bit of an aggro if there was something wrong with the property. I once had a bath in one of the houses that we lived in. Bath fell through the kitchen. And that same property that I lived in, I was in bed on a Saturday and the landlord brought people round to come and view. So it's a bit of a flip side, I liked having a good landlord. When it worked, but when it wasn't a good landlord and had people just turning up while I was in bed, that wasn't great. But I think one of the things that we offer, we have residential properties, we've got assisted living properties, and we've got student properties, and a lot of them have an assured rental guarantee.
Yeah, and I think I think it's for me anyway. So many people I come into contact with they're leading busy lives.
Yeah.
You know, I will have conversations, as you know, I have conversations with investors at weekends and evenings, because talking to them during the daytime is not going to happen. That tells you all you need to know. They're leading busy lives.
Yeah.
They obviously want the best net returns they can get, but what they also want is something that they can forget about and have something hands off that's just easy for them. That perception that owning an investment property is troublesome or is in some way, shape or form going to cause them hassle at some point. It doesn't need to be like that.
It doesn't.
10 years ago, 5-10 years ago, that may have been the case, but there's products there now that can completely take that out of the equation, that you can literally buy it, earn the income, forget about it.
Absolutely.
Because they're running their own businesses, they've got family, that they're always doing something, and they just want something they can literally get, and that's it. And done and dusted. And it's brilliant that those opportunities are there. And it's obviously our job to try and communicate that to as many people as we possibly can.
Yeah.
It's also a thing where I when I speak to customers, I always say, look, refer people to friends, family members, business colleagues, because there can never be an assumption that other people know about this. I said, just share the information, get them to call me, and I'll happily sit and have a chat and meeting, and and it's brilliant to do that, because it's what I love doing anyway. I just love finding out about people all the time.
It is nice finding out about people, what they want, and sometimes they're not everyone's going to come and buy, but it doesn't mean that you don't like building up those relationships still. There's going to be other people out there that they might look at, but I like to think that once we've sort of finished speaking with them, once we've had our interaction with them, that they will come back again sometime in the future. I think our marketing's come on so much as well over the years. I think when I was working in property law firm, most of our advertising was done just a little bit in a paper, say, the Sunday magazine or like the Manchester Evening News, we'd put something in there. When I first started working at a law firm, it was trying to take away from making buying or selling a property such an elaborate task, so laborious. You used to have to book some time off work to go into your solicitor's office, to go through the paperwork, to sign it all. So we're trying to make it a bigger operation where you could just phone up and you could get email updates. I thought that was amazing at the time. I thought that was revolutionary, that people could just get a contract pack like via email, and now it's a matter of course now. You can't imagine actually having to go in and speak to your solicitor to go through it all.
No, I mean, that's how it should be, really.
Yeah.
Again, exactly what I said before. It's the busy lives thing. You want people to take the hassle out of that situation. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned about when that sort of media. I mean, obviously, so my media advertising background with it. When we first advertised in developers, it was always newspapers. Yeah. A little bit of TV. That was pretty much it. Now, obviously, newspapers have pretty much gone online, so you don't have physical print copies. And as I say, you had a limited number of target audiences. Now you've got discount to market properties for first-time buyers. You've got shared ownership properties. You've got over 55s properties, over 70s properties, and then obviously investment properties. When I first worked in that, investors didn't buy. You thought that was like some big businessman bought multiple, but it just didn't exist. Yeah. And then now it's everyone has an interest or will be looking at it, and you just think, wow, how that has changed. So, but it's brilliant. You've got so many different sectors, so many different options to play with.
Yeah, so many different opportunities and options, like you've said.
Hugely.
It isn't just a one size fits all. There will be something out there for the needs of the investor, of the purchaser, of the landlord.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other thing to bear in mind is obviously, I mean, my mum and dad, I think years ago, invested in sort of shares and the stock market and stuff like that. That's obviously become slightly more problematic down the years, because obviously all of the international finance markets are linked now. Yeah. What's that old phrase? If somebody sneezes in America, they catch a cold in the UK, that type of thing. I have a regular pension meeting every single year about my pension, which obviously in some way, shape or form linked to sort of, stock markets and shares. And I get slightly bad news, this is happening, that's happening, this isn't so good. And then we always chat then about, well, what the stock's doing for, say, construction companies, builders, property companies, and they're always robust.
They are always robust. That was one thing I was going to touch on, actually. When I was working in a property law firm, I experienced the first sort of big property crash, and that was a panic. I thought this is the end of it. We're never going to get over it. We're all going to lose our jobs. But it slowly just carried on, and it came out of the other end. And we've had recently the same with COVID.
I remember there was a bit of doom and gloom in terms of the impact that was going to have, potentially going to have at that particular time. And yet we came back into the market. You had all that kind of like pent up spend that, you know, people hadn't gone out. They couldn't go out. Pent up spend, so they could use that on a deposit to buy the house. I remember going back to the first time buyer thing. I remember so many first time buyers who come in and said, look, we've been living with mum and dad. It's driving us bonkers. We haven't got any outside space. And it just shows, even in such an extreme circumstance, how the UK property market just always bounces back. Yeah. It never fails to deliver.
Yeah, and it never fails to surprise and impress me, because when we got over the first market crash, when I was dealing with that, and then we had COVID, I was really worrying, because alongside that with COVID, we had Brexit as well, and that impacted construction quite a little bit behind the scenes, didn't it? Costs for materials was increasing. That caused a slight delay with some builds, but that seemed to be the worst of it, really. I think it got handled very well.
It did. I mean, the other thing was availability of construction workers, tilers, electricians, plumbers. You know, it was hard. It's hard to find good quality people, trades anyway, a lot of the time. But that was obviously a big impact on it. And delivery times. You remember we had all the sort of the issues with getting stuff delivered from overseas. Very, very difficult. But the builders just handled it. You know, I think at the end of the day, you know, if you ever get build delays with something, as long as you are open and honest and keep people informed,
exactly,
that's all you can do, because at the end of the day, it's the nature of the beast.
It is.
And you are going to get issues with that sometimes, but if you keep people informed and keep them, and just show that you are keeping them in the loop with it, it's not people, you'll be surprised how forgiving people are.
A lot of people do understand, especially with off-plan builds, because all you can ever do is just give an anticipated completion date. There can be something like we found with COVID, Brexit. It was the logistics of actually getting material from overseas, because all builders, they don't go into this aimlessly. They go into it with a schedule, and they've got certain timelines to meet, and they've got to meet with planning and building regulations, and they're expecting one team to come in and do the tiling, one team to come and do this. So all it takes is one thing just to knock the schedule out slightly. But I think the way that a lot of our builders around about that time managed to bring back the developments ready for completion, it was impressive on their part under all of that stress and the pressure.
Hugely. I think they actually surpassed expectations to a certain extent, because if you think of the enormity of the entire economy and your social life essentially coming to a grinding halt, for them to bounce back as quick as they did and deliver on the projects that they did is, I'm not going to say Dunkirk spirit, but you know, there's that kind of element where, you know, people just came together and genuinely delivered as best they can. Yeah, and there was demand there. You know, at the end of the day, that, you know, that we all it was an unprecedented situation. We didn't know what the impact was going to be, and they delivered fabulously, I think. And yeah, as I say, it just shows how just the housing market, say, never fails to amaze me in terms of how it performs.
And again, there's just so much demand for properties, so much demand from tenants wanting accommodation to move into. So I don't see it ever easing off anytime soon. I think the perspective for 2025 at the moment is very much as a buyer's market. Now, I understand that saying in sort of selling standalone one or two houses, you know, from one owner that's had it for a couple of years to another owner that's had it for a couple of years. You know, I guess it is a buyer's market. You can wait and find, you know, negotiate and find something that you're going to get at a price that fits your budget. I think, though, with us, we offer so much that fits different budgets. And I think now is the time. Now is the time to capitalise on a lot of the offers that are out there at the moment, the different kind of variation, and to really make that investment in your future and for getting your returns, because you like to speak to your clients and find out what is your drive for this investment. And you find out from them whether it could be that they want to have something more to add to their pension. They might want something to hand over to their children to take over so that they can create a little business for themselves. So you're very good at finding that out from them. And I think as a company, we want to try and offer something that will fit everybody as a whole.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it's a buyer's market, but I mean, just going back to the assisted living thing we were talking about before, you know, we launch new projects on that probably every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
You know, we get 10, 15, 20 units in a development and they go so fast. And obviously we've now been working with them sort of 2 years in terms of individual investors. The number of times I'll get client referrals coming back to me from people who've bought from before, and they want to go into it again. And their first recommendation is say, look, I've had a really hassle-free, easy journey with Knight Knox. I've purchased this property, it was brilliant, and I've now recommended it to my mum or my brother or my business partner. And that's it's a fantastic sort of snowball effect that you get from that. And I always love to one of the things, and I know you do this a heck of a lot in your day-to-day role, is just getting that positive feedback from people, which is I mean, who doesn't want to hear positive feedback, you know? But when you get, I just had a lovely experience. Everybody was really supportive and friendly from both either after sales, you know, the solicitors that we work with. It's just nice to hear that you're doing a fantastic job.
It is lovely. You know? I mean, just before we came to film this, I took a call in from a client who's recently completed, just at the start of December last year, recently completed on a student accommodation, and he went to see it. He was liaising with the management company and the lettings agent, and he actually went to see his student accommodation yesterday, and he couldn't believe how fabulous it was. He knew sort of on paper he was making a good investment. He was happy that it was completing on time, and that his rental payments were going to start very soon. But he actually took a friend along with him yesterday, and his friend was so impressed. They said, look, can you let me know if there's one or two that might be available? And I'm having to say to clients, firstly, brilliant. I'm so glad that you love it. I'm really glad that you're referring people. I'm really sorry, but we've completely sold out of it. You know, they've all completed. So it's, you know, I'm glad. And he was actually disappointed that there wasn't any more available. But it's nice to know that he's had such a good experience. He will come back to us and he's looking for something similar to that. So before I headed in here, spoke to the property consultant, and we're going to keep him posted about what's going to come up.
That's exactly how it should be, you know. And again, you know, leading on from that, it's the quality of the, you know, you go into developments these days and the quality of the fit and finish on the builds. I mean, you know, it's an important part of obviously what we do is obviously aligning ourselves with the very best developers who've got the strong track records, who, you know, if you're buying off plan, you know, we've, as you know, we've got, you know, some key developers who often finish their projects ahead of schedule, not behind. And you walk in there and they are genuinely impressive locations. And obviously to get that across to customers, until it's built and completed, you can't sort of demonstrate that. You can obviously take them to completed developments that they've done. But when you go into it, you think, wow, that looks absolutely stunning.
It is. And you just feel really proud and you're happy because it's not just that one property that they've bought in that project. It's how it looks as a whole. It's all the finishing touches. It's impressive, and I feel really proud to think we've worked with this developer. You've been here for quite a while now, and based on what we're selling at the moment, is there anything in particular that you've got quite an affinity with, something that you're really enjoying, that you're quite behind at the moment? Because we have got quite a large range, haven't we?
Yeah, I think the two probably for me would be the assisted living, because, and I've touched upon this, it's that social angle to it. I've had a lot of people in my family and friends and social network who sort of work in that sector down the years. So I know how challenging it can be. And also how it can be very stressful for the actual tenants when they move into properties.
Yeah.
And I know that the housing associations that we work with make that process as easy as possible they can for the tenants.
Yeah.
And that, for me, is a really key aspect, because they properly care and look at the type of issues that person's got, their background, to actually place them in an appropriate apartment within the building. That's the level of thought that goes into it. So I've got a bit of an affinity with that one, I think, because of that.
I can tell you do, because you sound very passionate and you sound very invested in it.
Hugely. And I always tend to I try and bring that point into the conversation when I'm speaking to investors, that you know, this has just got such fantastic social benefit. I think the other one would be the student one.
Absolutely.
I think, again, harking back to what I'd said before, you know, the student accommodation that used to exist many moons ago was quite poor. Our eldest son, he's now at university in the UK. We were looking for student accommodation for him, so he only moved in last September. And finding good quality student accommodation for him was quite challenging. University were brilliant, actually. They actually managed to find him halls of residence that was on site where he is. And when we went there, I was like, wow, this is beautiful. But also the fact that it was literally 2-second walk, because when he's away from home, you're gonna worry. It's just,
it's natural.
You're gonna do it. So I just thought, like, as soon as I saw it, I thought, right, there's a car park there, you know, his facilities. I just thought, yeah, happy with that. But that is hard to find.
It is.
And so when I'm selling purpose-built student accommodation, getting that point across to people, the safety and security for the student, strip out the fact that investment is fantastic for the investor. It's emphasising the fact that is good quality student accommodation is a godsend, because when you're at university away from your family, it can be stressful, it can be worrying, you're meeting new people, and if you've got that taken off your kind of worry list, brilliant.
With me, it's the student accommodation as well, but I think more so I've got a particular project that I just felt really personally invested in. It was X1 Cheltenham Place, and I think it's because I've lived in the area for so long, and I live not far from X1 Cheltenham Place, so I'd walk past it constantly, take pictures of it, take photos, little videos, and Thomas, my 8-year-old, would constantly be like, Mom, I can't believe you're taking a video again. But I was like, but I'm going to send this to all of our clients. They're going to love being able to see it, because as much as we get updates from our developers, at the initial stages, they can be a little bit sparse, which can be worrying for someone that's bought off plan and they're wondering, where is it going to go to? You know, I've put my money in and I can't see any work happening. And I think a lot of it is because the developers are more keen in following their build project, their program, and they're not so invested at that point in getting drone footage out or getting videos out to clients. And I understand, because they might think it's not quite necessary at this stage. But I used to just love taking some pictures and saying, you will get drone footage at some point, but just for now I can let you know it's definitely going ahead. And even now, going on the bus to Media City, we've got those towers that are up and running, residentials, and we do tend to get a lot of graduate students living in Media City. So yeah, I like this whole area. All Salford, where our office is based at the moment, I've seen it change so much.
You can't recognise it now.
No.
It's completely changed, you know. But I mean, and that's Manchester's, the growth in Manchester's been.
It's been amazing.
I rented a flat here 10 years ago, I think it was.
Yeah.
The actual physical skyline, when you look at it now, is completely different.
It is.
But there's just so much vibrancy going on within the city. And obviously, the area where we are now is obviously part of that. But just going back to what you said a moment ago, that personal touch, because I remember when you came in with like photographs of Cheltenham Place.
Just excited about it. We are actually excited about what we sell.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's just that fact that little personal touch can make a huge difference to somebody who, if it's their first time they've ever bought, for them to see some actual photos that we've taken and go, well, actually pop down and took these, that makes a massive difference to people, and just have that connectivity with them, on a regular basis as much as you can. It's just invaluable. Because
I know you like to do that. You like to, whether it's a client that you've had and you've been building their portfolio for some time, or it's just someone that's made an inquiry, you do like to keep touching base with them, whether they've bought from us and you just want to say, I might be getting something launched within the next couple of months. This is what it could be. Would it be of interest? Or clients that have bought maybe 3 or 4 and they've been rented out, completed for some time. You like to catch up with them. How's the rent going? Is there any issues that I can help you with?
Never assume. Never assume that everything's absolutely. People's circumstances change quite a lot of the time. They might be now going into a different market. Or say recommended friends, family members, whatever. That keeping in touch thing is it's how I like to do business. At the end of the day, if I'm making a purchase myself, I buy from people. I know this sounds cliched. I know it does, but I buy from people. Their readiness to come back to me quickly, efficiently, with the right information to build up that relationship with me. That's how I buy. Yeah. So that's how I kind of project it when I'm speaking to investors or anybody. I want them to want to come back to me, even if they were looking at a development that we don't even represent. I will say to them, look,
I've heard you have those conversations.
And I've done it loads, because I think it's important just to say, look, I'm an expert in this area. If I can help you look at something else and give you some sort of assessment of it, it'll make them feel comfortable with me. In fact, I spoke to a customer the other day, and they had spoken to a couple of different people about different projects, different locations, and it was a really nice thing he said to me on the phone. He said, I just feel comfortable with you, because he said, I don't feel like you are selling to me. Yeah. And I said, well, I'm not. I'm a consultant here to try and help you. But he said, you've given me so much support on projects that are nothing to do with you. He said, no one else has spent the time to do that.
No, you want them to invest in you, not just the property, but in you. And because there's longevity here. We're not people that sort of jump from one career to another. As I was saying, I've been at Knight Knox for nearly 12 years, under 10 years with the other one. It's all about building relationships with the people that you work with. That helps a lot when you like the people that you work with.
Certainly do.
And also the clients, because we're not going anywhere, and we just want to keep building on the 20 years that we've had in the industry so far. We want to keep doing more of that. We want to launch more. And I just think building those good relationships with clients, having them invest in you in the way that you genuinely are interested and invested in them, makes it easier going forward.
It's the best way of building your business at the end of the day. It's an absolute no-brainer to do that. Yeah. And it's the bit, genuinely, it's the bit I enjoy most about the job. Is building that relationship, understanding them. How's the family? How's the kids? That's the best part of it. It's why I sit and it's why I do this job.
It is. You were saying how you phone clients on the weekend, and that will go over and beyond from when they've bought. They still like to touch base with you, wish you a happy new year. I've still got clients where I feel my heart smile when they drop me a little message and say, how you doing? Wishing you and the family all the best. And they remember little things that I've told them, because, it isn't all just business. It's building a relationship in the way that I would with you guys, the way that I would with my friends. You've just got to find the pleasure in it and the purpose in it. And I think that is the main thing. So I'm excited about 2025.
Very much so. Yeah. I think you've summed it up perfectly. It's going to be an exciting year. Lots going on, lots to look forward to. I mean, obviously, we know some of the stuff that's going to be launched in the next sort of, we can't say.
Don't say.
6 to 12 months. Yeah, it's just going to be another fabulous year and a brilliant team that we work with. Yeah. And I know you'll agree with that, because we have got an amazing team here.
We do.
Absolutely amazing team. It is a proper family.
It is.
I would say.
I would say that. I'm genuinely interested in how you get on. You are the same with me. And I think it correlates to how we treat our clients as well. And I think they treat the same with us. So it's very nice. Very happy family right now.
There's a lot of love in the room.
There is. I love you, Chris.
Love you too.